Welcome to our Mid-Atlantic Tech Bridge DoD SBIR proposal workshop. We're excited to have folks in the room here with us in the assembly in downtown Norfolk, and those of you online that are joining us. So this workshop came about because we did a SBIR sitter kind of intro in April, and some of the feedback we got is people would love to dig in a little bit more on the actual mechanics of writing a proposal. And so we're focused on SBIRs. We'll get into that a little bit more as we go. You'll see the agenda up here, right? You'll be with me from 9 to 12. And if you didn't get the email with the link to the documents that we'll be using, because again, this will be a very hands-on event, you can scan the QR code up here and it will take you to a Google Drive, and all the documents that we'll be using are up there. If you don't have that or you can't get to it, not a big deal. Chase and I will be sharing our screen and you'll see all those documents. It's just for future reference, you can use those when you go to write your own SBIR proposal. We're asking that, especially those of you online, if you have questions throughout, to place them in the chat, and we'll try to get to them where it makes sense. But you'll see we have Q&A sessions built in. There's 2 of them and a break. So if we don't get to them right away, Chase or I, we will get to them during those breaks, and we'll also open up the room to questions. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to the Mid-Atlantic Tech Bridge team to do a quick intro along with 757 Collab. So Dr. Julie Stark is going to do our Mid-Atlantic Tech Bridge overview, if you want. There we go.
All right. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see many returning faces from some of the other things we've done. I'm Julie Stark, along with some of my partners that are here in the room, and their names and commands. And since I see a lot of new faces, I'm just going to take a minute and talk a little bit about the Tech Bridge and NavalX and what it is we do. So our particular Tech Bridge is the Mid-Atlantic Tech Bridge. It's part of a network, which I'll talk about in a minute. And each of us is from Navy commands in this immediate area. So I'm from NSWC Carderock, the Norfolk detachment. My colleague Gerald Walker, over here taking pictures, is from NavalX Atlantic Hampton Roads detachment, and my colleague Roy, in the lovely rose-colored shirt in the back, is from NSWC Dahlgren Dam Neck, which is here in Virginia Beach. And then a unique aspect of the Mid-Atlantic Tech Bridge is that we also have a naval active duty commander that is part of our team, and that's really great. So in this area, we have great ties back to the warfighters, which if you're developing science and technology tools and things for the warfighters, it's always good to have their feedback along the way, and we have that unique capability here in the area. So the 4 commands work together as part of the NavalX network, and our job is really to have activities and events to be the super connector between the warfighters and know the needs of the warfighters and what the gaps are and what they need to do to be able to fight their fight and meet their mission requirements, and to be able to convey that in terms that we're allowed to say to industry partners. So one of the main reasons that NavalX was stood up, and subsequently 18 tech bridges across the country and now the world were stood up, was to be able to bridge that gap, to reach out to the non-traditional partners. We already know how to work with the big boys and the big companies. They know how to work with us. And it's not like we're saying we don't still want to work with them, we do. But Secretary Gertz, that had this vision to start this, was really the one that came along and said, we need to be able to reach out to small businesses. We need to be able to do that because there's a lot of small businesses that have a lot to offer. But it's not always so easy to work with the government. So one of our main missions with the Tech Bridges, especially ours, is to have events like this. So we have a number of, like I said, there's a big network. There are 18 Tech Bridges. So the circles here, the red circles, they can see the slides, right? Zoom folks. So the red circles are the different Tech Bridges that are throughout the country. There's 15 throughout the continental United States, and now there's one in London. There's 3 overseas. We're building a couple more overseas. So, we work together. So while we're really glad to have so many small businesses here in the Hampton Roads area, doesn't mean that small businesses from other areas can't partner with us or another Tech Bridge. The Tech Bridge is unique in that we're not a funding source per se. We're here to be the connecting piece between funding sources and technology needs, essentially. So Like I said, we work as a network. So if a small company approaches us, we reach out to the rest of the network within the tech bridges. We all work very closely, and most of these tech bridges it's an auxiliary duty for all the Navy folks, and it's usually fairly senior people, and we're in either the chief technology office shop or S&T type, so we know how to reach back throughout our commands. So if we are made aware of a technology capability that a small business has, even if we don't think it fits into our particular geographic region or our needs, we might know of other needs and be able to share that information. So these slides are available. There's a couple other slides as well that'll be made available to you. I think there's one more for this tech bridge that has, and again, I'm not going to go through all this. So our tech bridge was just stood up a couple of years ago. And so far in the last couple of years, we've had a number of events, many of which focus on engagement with small businesses. And we encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn, where my business analyst, Haley, does a great job, and Eileen, of posting and keeping a lot of the events we're doing that are of interest to small business. So you can find out about all those on LinkedIn and Insta. But LinkedIn, I think, has the most thorough information. And we have this here just as a takeaway for you of some of the upcoming things we're doing. Our contact information is here, and I believe Tina is distributing it as well. We all have Navy accounts and Gmails, because sometimes the Navy accounts, well, I can't open your email all the time. So we use and yeah, so just a highlight of some of the things we've done in the last year, some of the upcoming things. We have a number of other things, activities and events that are of interest to small businesses. And we encourage you to reach out to any one of us. We work as a team to try to, if you have any questions about how to do business with the government. Our partners, both 757 Collab that Eileen works for, I think she's going to talk about that, and then C5BDI are both incredibly knowledgeable about intricacies of working with the government, and are always happy to field those questions and bridge that gap so that you can do work with the Navy and bring good technology solutions to our warfighters. Did you want to do any questions now for Tech Bridge people while we're all here, or do we want to wait till the end? What do you want to do? Okay. Okay, so then so the thing I didn't mention is that all of the tech bridges have a number of partnership intermediary agreement partners. And what we do is we partner with 501c3 or nonprofits, generally 501c3s, to help us to engage with the small businesses. And we at the Mid-Atlantic Tech Bridge are very lucky to have an excellent PIA partner, 757 Collab. And one of the managers for 757 Collab, Eileen Brewer, is now going to talk about that organization.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out, both in person and online. It's an honor to have you here and take the time with us to learn about how to write SBIR proposals. What we do is we provide the space for the Mid-Atlantic Tech Bridge to have a presence outside of the base. So it's easier for them to reach you and for you to reach them. So all the tech bridges have a presence outside of the base. This tech bridge is based here in this building on the first floor in the 757 Startup Studios. So they have an office there, and you can reach them through me or through them directly. 757 Collab is a nonprofit that offers 3 different types of resources to businesses in the community. So I just wanted to let you know who we are and what we offer. We have the 757 Startup Studios, which is on the first floor of this building. We offer 6 months free co-working space for early stage startups through an application process. Applications are open now for a cohort that would be starting in November. We give you free co-working space and weekly training and mentorship across many different topics at no cost. The 757 Accelerate is an intensive 12-week training program for a little bit more advanced startups. So Startup Studios is great for ideation, working on minimal viable product, customer discovery. Do I have a real product or service? What do I need to do to get it up and running? The Accelerator is to accelerate existing businesses. So you have a business and you want to grow it. And we're more tech focused once you get into the Accelerator. The Startup Studios is a little bit more agnostic in who we have come in and work on their businesses. But once you move into the Accelerator, we're looking for more of the tech-based type companies. 12 weeks intensive training here You're in this building for the first 2 weeks and the last 2 weeks of that 12 weeks. In between, you can be anywhere else. We focus on Hampton Roads, but we also invite 1 or 2 from outside of the area for each cohort. Those cohorts happen once a year. They just started it this week, and the applications are usually open around the May, June, July timeframe. At the end of the 12 weeks, we put them on a bus and we take them out to 5 different investor groups and have them pitching to the investors. So we help build those relationships directly to the investors. The third resource we have is called 757 Angels. This is over 100 individuals in the community that are angel investors who want to invest in Virginia-based startups. So they're looking for you, and they do investing 3 times per year. They have applications open right now. Their applications close on September 14. They're also very technology focused. There is a $100 fee for applying to the Angels. So if you're not very technical or technology based, if you're non-technology, then you might want to focus more on the startup studios and the Accelerate. In the Accelerate program, we give each startup $20,000 non-dilutive equity to put into your business and grow while you're in the program with us. So we're all over social media, all the different platforms, all the information about who we are and how to get to our websites, how to apply for the program, so it's available. So join us if it feels like a good fit for you. We'd love to have you with us. Any questions at all about us? Are there questions in the chat, or we're okay? All right, great. Thank you very much. And now we're going to turn it over to actually learning about SBIR workshop. SBIR. All right, I'm gonna.
All right, Chase, again, can you hear me loud and clear? I'm switching over mics.
Yeah, that mic is coming through a little clearer.
Okay, yeah, sometimes the podium one isn't the greatest, so, okay. And then there's Eileen's information. And again, everyone, all these slides that you're seeing right now, everyone will get them emailed to them after the event. So no need to take pictures or furiously write down everything on the slides, because you will be getting these afterwards. Okay, so as Eileen mentioned, we are now going to get into the nuts and bolts of why we're here. And so leading that charge is going to be myself, Tina Bove, here in the assembly, and then my colleague, Chase Owens, who's online coming to us from Texas. So we work for a small business development company called C5BDI, and we are actually headquartered right here in Virginia Beach. We're a woman-owned small business. We got our start about 6 years ago, and really we got our start because we saw this gap where there was small businesses, great technology, there were government customers looking to get to those small businesses, and there was no contracting mechanism. So we're not going to get into too much on that whole contracting mechanism, but SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research, is a mechanism to help bridge that gap. And so we saw that, and we've done a lot with SBIR phase 3s for those of you that are familiar with SBIRs in general. But in order to get an SBIR phase 3, you have to have won a phase 1 or phase 2. So what we're really going to focus on here today is how do you put together a winning proposal? And again, very hands-on. If you have those documents, you're going to see, I'll put up what you need to have up at the particular times. But that is really what we do. And you see Chase and I's contact information is there. So, you know, outside of this forum, please feel free to reach out to us if you have any additional questions. So I'm going to be switching my screen around a little bit because, again, I want to take you to the actual resources. So bear with me just a little bit as I kind of shift around and make sure you're seeing my screen. But for those of you in person or online, I'm going to start here and then I'm going to take you, I'm going to stop sharing and actually go to the website, and we're going to poke around a little bit. So you'll see here, so this is the Defense Cyber Sitter Innovation Portal, DCIP as we call it. And if you're doing anything in DoD, SBIRs, or STTRs, you will live and breathe DCIP. You will learn to love it and hate it because come, you know, a couple days before submission time, the thing tends to crash a lot. So Chase, I'm sure, is chuckling right now because we deal with this all the time. But this is going to be kind of your home base. And so I've got you've got the website right there. You can type it in and go there right now with me. But this is what it should look like. I'm going to walk you through the different pieces of it. But one thing I want to bring up front, because this has come up more and more in the world we live in, maybe not so much for you all that are not in this SBIR, STTR space, but the SBIR program is up for reauthorization September 30th. And right now, it's a congressionally mandated program, has been since its inception in 1982, and it has not been reauthorized. And there's a lot of chatter around making some changes to it. In particular, they're looking at the phase 1 and phase 2s and how many a company has. And if you have a lot, have you transitioned those? Because right, the whole idea of this program is to stimulate the economy, you know, using small business technology. But if you're not, you're only doing a phase 1 and a phase 2 and not actually transitioning that either within the government or the commercial space, they're not seeing that as successful. So I have there's some great articles out there on actually what is going on and what the holdup is. But, you know, we picked this date and time because the DoD puts out 3 cycles a year. And we were going to be in the pre-release for the 22.3 cycle. Well, because of the reauthorization and that it hasn't been reauthorized, those in the DoD that wanted to get topics out to small businesses have pushed up their timeline, and they pushed it into this what's called 22.4 cycle. And for us, that's kind of an off cycle where it's kind of a dumping ground where it doesn't fit in a .1, .2, or .3 cycle. It's the .4 is kind of separate. So everything you're going to see, so you'll see up here 22.4 cycle, everything we're going to look at is going to be due on or before September 30th, or it's September 29th, which again is when everything's set to expire if it doesn't get reauthorized. So I just want to give you a little bit of background on that. Again, I've got some great articles. I was reading one last night that was actually really good of, you know, where it is in Congress, what happens. It could get on a continuing resolution. So it still exists right now. And I will say, obviously, this is my own opinion, but it will get reauthorized in one way, shape, or form. So it may change a little bit, but I don't see Congress letting this program go. It's gotten reauthorized every time. It's a great program. Will they make some changes to it? Yes, but I don't think it's going to be anything drastic that's going to impact any one of us probably online or in this forum. So I'm going to so let me stop sharing, and then I'm going to go to a different screen, which is actually DSIP itself. Okay, so I am live on this screen. So I want to point you to a couple of things that I'm going to be using, and you have the references to here. So there's a lot of great information on the Learning and Support tab here, where these job aids. So I'm going to be pulling up the registration and login job aid. It's in the Google Drive folder I sent you, but if you ever have any questions about what to do in DSIP, they actually do have some pretty decent job aids here, so you can quickly pull those up. The BAA schedule, again, we come here frequently to see, you know, usually this upcoming tab will have, okay, the 22.3, so 2022.3, that third cycle we should have been pre-releasing now. That would have been listed there with the dates at pre-release, when it actually opens, and when everything's due. So again, with everything with the reauthorization, there's nothing there right now. There will be in the future. So, and you can see here, you know, what is active right now. So we're going to focus on an SBIR, so Small Business Innovation Research topic. There are small business technology transfer. And the only difference there is you have to have a university partner to go after something like that. So this is a good resource again in the future to see what's upcoming. So what I want to take you all to now is the actual active topic. So if you kind of click over here, I'm going to go over to the topics tab, and you're going to see, and in the slide deck that you're going to get, you're going to have like a screenshot of this, but this is every open topic right now that's available for small businesses to apply to. And you'll see, right, they're very specific. And we're actually going to be going through this A224-024. So that's an Army topic. You've got Air Force topics, AF. You're going to have, I don't think the DITRA is in here. So again, this is for the DoD specifically. There are 10 other federal agencies that participate in SBIRs, but this workshop is specifically focused on the DoD, and we chose an Army topic. So you can scroll through here. MDA's on here, SOCOM will be down here. There's a couple Navy topics here. And again, you'll see the title there, but on any of these, you can, click the down arrow, and you're going to actually be able to read the solicitation. You can pull it down as a PDF. You can pull it down as a Word doc. And then you're going to get, every one of them is kind of set up just like this. So what I'm going to do though, is I'm actually getting into a little ahead of myself, because I want to get into our particular topic that we're going to be working on. So like I said, we picked an Army topic, and it was this lightweight reconfigurable UH-60 floor. So kind of looking at the topic, you're going to see the technology focus areas, some of the key words associated with it, and what are the objectives of this topic? So what is important to the topic writer here? And then you're going to come down into a basic description. And we're not going to sit here and read the whole thing, but another key part is some of these are direct to phase 2. So you're kind of skipping the phase 1, which will end up being, a white paper delivered, and can go directly to a phase 2, but you still got to show that phase 1 feasibility. So it's important to read both what they're looking to get out of a phase 1, and then ultimately, in the phase 2, it's some type of prototype that's going to be delivered. So they'll walk you through what that looks like. And then what does the phase 3, that commercialization piece look like to them? I highly encourage you to read the references. And, that's going to tell you a lot about what the topic author was thinking, and why, what is the problem they're trying to solve. Maybe they have some ideas of how they want it solved, but those references can be really helpful. And then we're going to get, so most topics, of course, the one we picked didn't have it, will have a TPOC listed. So that's the technical point of contact. Highly encourage you to reach out to that TPOC with some questions. So whether you don't or do have some burning questions, we always encourage you to reach out, because hopefully they will talk to you on the phone, and hearing it straight from their mouth is always better than reading a solicitation. And usually we pick up on a lot of great pieces of information when we talk to the TPOC. Some will only take questions over email. I still encourage you to email in some questions that you have based on the topic. And again, it's also getting your company name in front of them. So not that that's going to make a difference, but again, when they come to review, they may be like, oh yeah, I remember talking to C5BDI, and they had some good questions. I like their technology because they told me a little bit about it. But there's also an option here. You can ask questions, but they are open to the public, and it's called CITIS. So just keep in mind that any question you ask on here, everyone's going to see. So, which isn't a bad thing, and you can learn some things too, but you can, that's another good avenue as you're preparing to write your proposal, to look through the Q&A. But again, highly encourage you, if a TPOC, technical point of contact, is listed, that you should 100% be reaching out to them to ask them some questions. Okay. I'm going to pause. I don't know, Haley, if there's any questions on that piece, and then I'm going to kind of jump into actually getting registered in DSIP. Good. Okay. Any questions in the room? Okay, great. Let me shift back over and make sure we're in a good spot. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you all to do now, if you have it in front of you, is to open up, hold on, is that job aid as it relates to logging on to DSIP. So it should be called, I'm trying to get so many screens. Okay, so it's the registration job aid PDF. So if you open that up, you can have it, again, I'm going to have it up here though too, so you can follow along with me. And I'm going to kind of walk you through what you're going to need to do to get logged in and registered in DSIP. And there's a couple really important things that we got to hit on. So I'll give you guys just a second to get that up if you want. And again, I showed you exactly where this was located on DSIP. So in that kind of references folder, you have it in the Google folder that I shared with you, but it's also there. So first step in being able to submit a proposal is being able to get into DSIP. So you can poke around at like the BAA and look at the topics without having to be registered. But when it comes to actually submitting a proposal, you've got to be registered on DSIP. And so, you know, I'm not going to walk through every piece of this, but I'm going to hit the big highlights here. So, and I am scrolled way too far down. Okay. You know, this is what it's going to talk. This entire job aid is going to get you set up with your first account. I'm not going to go through it, but it will also allow you to add additional users to it as once you get logged in initially. So really the most important part is that you get initially registered and can get on DSIP. And then from there, you can add other folks, users to it. So we've already been to this website. There's a big login register button there that you're going to click in. So most, you know, probably in the last couple of months, I've seen that most kind of government sites are going to creating this account through login.gov and being able, they're authenticating you through that. It's really easy, but you're going to have to get set up with a login.gov account. So you're either going to sign in or create an account to login.gov if you don't have that. And then obviously you're going to kind of follow the instructions of email address. They're going to verify your email address and confirm that. And then they're going to want you to create a really strong password to get logged in, which makes sense. And then they're going to want to have you pick an authentication method. So there's, I think, 5 different methods here you can see up there. So they're going to have you pick one of those authentication methods. And then, right, you're all set up there. Okay, so then you're going to kind of come back to DSIP, and here's where we'll get, this is really important. So that I'm going to hit on for just a little bit. So here, you're going to, when you go in, so you log in through login.gov, you're kind of back on DSIP and you're actually going to be registering on DSIP. You need to have your small business concern is what they call small businesses. That's you all. Your UEI or DUNS. Now, DUNS went away, or UEI came into play April 4th, 2022. So now when you go to SAM.gov and you're trying to get your DUNS number, you're actually going to get a UEI number. So I am not 100% sure if you can even use a DUNS on DSIP anymore because they're kind of, that's going away. And these unique entity ID numbers are what is taking its place. So you're going to enter that. And again, right now they're showing that you can enter one or the other. At some point, it's just going to be your UEI that you have to have. And I will put a shameless plug in that we have a workshop coming up September 15th with the PTAC and VIPC. If you have no idea what I'm talking about when I say DUNS or cage code, we're going to kind of walk you through that. And there's local free resources that can do that. We're not going to get into too much of that here, but just know that you're going to have some registrations already taken care of as it relates to being a small business and doing work with the government before you can get into DSIP. Okay. So, and at the end of all of this, you'll see how you can get registered for that event too. So you're going to enter your DUNS or your UEI. Again, it will be eventually just your UEI number. And then you're going to put in some basic firm information here, you know, name, firm name, your tax ID number. So again, you're actually a registered business. and then you're going to have to create a firm pin. I know a lot of people the companies we work with tend to forget this. So make sure it's a pin you're actually going to remember, because it can then get difficult to get back into DSIP. So you're going to create a username. Again, entering some basic information that you should have, addresses, and then you're going to click registered. Okay. And then you're done. And so again, what I want to re-emphasize is you've got to have, that DUNS or UEI number, which you get on sam.gov. And sam.gov is, you've got to get registered in there too. But before you even try to go after a DoD proposal, you're going to have to be registered on sam.gov. You'll get that UEI number and just have it right there next to you when you actually go to register in this DSIP portal to submit your first SBIR or second or third. Okay, so like I said, the rest of this job aid is very much you're going to want to add an additional user, you want to change something. That's what kind of the rest of this goes through. So I'm not going to get into too many details on that because it's similar to the process of registering. So I just want to stop there. And I feel like I saw a question pop up. Yeah. Okay. Let me look. I'll look. Okay. So grants.gov is different. And I don't know. So yeah, grants.gov, last I was in there was different, but I would not be surprised if they're going to shift to this login.gov too. So, but yes, grants.gov is completely separate from DSIP. And obviously you're familiar with that. So like, I think lastly, it was a NOAA proposal I was in there with. So other agencies use grants.gov. The DoD uses DSIP. Yes. Yep. 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 Yeah. And so as Dr. Stark was saying, so either way, that whole UEI or DUNS and getting your cage code, that's going to be a first step, regardless of whether you're going through grants.gov or you're going through DSIP. So, and we're not going to get into details of that, but we do have a workshop coming up that can definitely help with that. And there's local resources for that too. Okay. Any questions in the room on getting registered on DSIP? Okay. We're doing good. Let me go back to sharing my screen. Okay, so the next step that I'm going to go over is you've decided you want to go after a topic, you're registered in DSIP. The next step we like to take is actually creating a proposal number. So each proposal you submit on DSIP is going to have its own unique identification number, and it's slightly different for each, whether it's an Air Force submission, Army, they'll be slightly different. So first step, you're going to get logged into DSIP, okay? And then up at the corner here, okay. Up in the corner there, you'll see it says start new proposal. So you'll click on start new proposal, and then we have a screenshot for step 3 here, where we're in that 22.4 cycle. We're doing an SBIR, so it would be an SBIR or an STTR. In this case, we're doing an SBIR. It's a phase 1 because, like I said, there are direct to phase 2 options. You could be submitting a phase 2 off of a phase 1. So in this case, we're doing a phase 1. We're doing it with the Army for that component part. And then we actually select the topic that we're submitting to. So for this one, it's at Army 224-024. And then step D on the right, you see on the bottom here, proposal title. Some people get really hung up on this and they spend a lot of time trying to come up with the best proposal title. There is no required format. You're not getting judged on your title. Keep it simple. If you have a technology, you can put the name of the technology in there. And then as it relates to the topic that you're doing, if you come up with your own unique acronym or name for how this technology supports the topic you're going after, that's great too. But don't spend too much time and getting hung up on the proposal title there. Okay. Any questions on that part? All right, so you're almost done with me. The last thing I want to touch on is, so we've got logged into DSIP. We've created our proposal number. This is going to kind of be the landing page when you log into DSIP and are looking at your proposals that you're potentially working on. So a couple things I want to point out. And I wish this pointer worked. So you'll see kind of that middle blue box there. You'll have volume 1 proposal summary, proposal certification, and contact information. So volume 1 is all your basic proposal information that's going to be, you're going to input into DSIP. And then volume 2 is your technical volume. So that's the technical white paper that you're going to write. Volume 3 is the cost volume. So that's where you're going to lay out all your cost piece. And then volume 5 is all your supporting documents. So you'll hear Chase kind of refer to volume 5, volume 2, as we walk through this particular proposal. And I wanted you guys to have just an idea of what he's talking about. So volume 2 is a big one. We're going to hit on that technical volume. And then volume 3 and 5, we're going to touch on in terms of the cost volume and then the supporting documents. So I see Victoria has a question that I can get to. I can't see that. Can you read it? Yeah, so the question there, because I don't think you hear it online, but it is in the chat there, is, you know, multiple people working in a proposal and being able to edit it. And that really goes back to getting other people registered in DSIP for you. So typically the PI is obviously the main one registered in there, but anyone in your firm that you want to be able to touch the proposals, they just have to be registered in DSIP, and then they can log in. And as long as they can log in, they can edit that proposal. So it really is going through that process again of adding additional users through your firm, getting them their own login, and then they can absolutely get in there. So good question. Okay. Any other questions in the room at all? All right, so now, that was kind of the overview from me. Now you're getting to the expert on who's written 1 million proposals. Chase up there on the screen for those of you in the room. So for everyone, these are kind of going to be the documents that we're going to be working on next. So, and Chase again is going to be kind of switching screens around and you know, hopping between different things. But if you want to pull up documents, these are kind of the 3 documents that he's going to be working through for this next segment. And then again, feel free to keep posting your questions in the comments. We'll try to get to them where they make sense, but we do have a block of time there after this session to answer specific questions. So Chase, with that, I am going to turn it over to you. I'm going to stop sharing and then I'm going to let you take over.
All right. Thanks, Tina. Greetings from Dallas. Appreciate everybody's time today. A quick background on me. As Tina mentioned, work for C5BDI. My background is a former Navy rescue swimmer, actually out of HSC 26 there in Norfolk. For joining the C5BDI team as one of their primary proposal writers. In that time, I've worked with hundreds of companies, worked on thousands of proposals for every agency out there. Someone had mentioned grants.gov. If you're familiar with grants.gov and unfamiliar with the DSIP portal, I think you'll be pretty pleasantly surprised. It's a much more intuitive interface, has its own issues like any portal, but it's a little easier to navigate. So with that, we will jump right in. I do have the chat opened up next to me, so if you do have a question, I can get that answered as it makes sense. The first thing we're going to start with is the BAA here. So Tina already showed you how to identify or how to find the individual topics, but Each solicitation round will have an overarching broad agency announcement. I won't dive too much into the beginning of this is a lot of legalese and discusses kind of the SBIR program in broad strokes. We'll highlight some key areas, but for the most part, I'm going to jump right into the proposal meat and potatoes. So we'll jump in through the introduction of the SBIR program here. One area I did want to highlight is they have the modernization priorities. The topic that we're going to be discussing today is under the general warfighter requirements, which is kind of a catch-all for anything that doesn't fall under these other key technology areas that the DoD is interested in. But if we were doing something in 5G or artificial intelligence, one of the nice things about those topics is you can generally find some great articles on where the DoD is trying to take that technology area. So you'll have Secretary of Defense quotes and pull quotes that you can use for proposals for a lot of these topic areas. As Tina mentioned, SBIR program is a 3-phase program. We'll be discussing the phase 1 today. A couple key definitions that I did want to highlight in the solicitation. So commercialization, you'll hear that term quite a bit. It refers both to federal government commercialization via the phase 3 or another contracting mechanism like a direct purchase and or commercial markets. The program itself, both the SBIR that Tina mentioned, which is has the university partner, 40% of the work has to be done by the small business concern, 30% has to be done by the research institution, and then the rest can either be done by subcontractors or the small business concern. For the SBIR phase 1 SBIR, 2/3 of the work needs to be done by the prime contractor. So if you are getting a teaming partner for the phase 1, just make sure that you're allocating 2/3 of the work share to the prime contractor. Essentially equivalent work, you'll see this pop up quite a bit in SBIR. So we just want to make sure that anytime we're proposing to a topic that we haven't proposed the exact same proposal to another topic. Usually there's going to be different use cases, so it can't be the same technology. But we just need to make sure that the use case or the feasibility study or the development effort, something significantly different has to be included in the proposal to make sure that we're not submitting essentially equivalent work. Then you'll see that we have a more legalese, fraud, waste, and abuse section, some hub zone. Principal investigator. So the principal investigator is going to be the individual that it's your project manager. They need to be primarily employed with the small business concern submitting the proposal. That means 1/2 of the principal investigator's time needs to be spent with that SBC. And now we're getting into the actual proposal fundamentals. So this is what we're primarily going to be spending our time discussing today. So eligibility and requirements. As I mentioned, you need to be a small business concern that's less than 500 employees. They do have the CFAR definition of a small business concern. If you're not familiar with the CFAR, it is available online, and it's a lot of information on exactly SBIR definitions, any kind of programmatic questions that you might have. Usually it'll be answered in the CFAR. Tina did mention the transition rate, which is actually going to be something that you'll have to fill out. It's called your company commercialization report in volume 4 of the proposal. So for proposers with greater than 20 phase 1 awards, they have to at least have a 0.25% transition rate to phase 2 awards. The commercialization benchmark for companies with over 15 phase 2 awards, they must have 15% of those phase 2 awards commercializing via sales or investments. So I got a question in the chat. Can you talk about ITAR and dual use technology? What do we need to be aware of, how to stay out of trouble? So certainly, most topics are going to identify whether they're going to have any ITAR component with that. I will say from a, this is definitely that is a good question for your legal team. It wouldn't be something I could speak a ton to outside of the fact that, you know, there's a form that you're going to fill out. It's called the contractor certification telecom communications document. And basically we can't source software, hardware from adversarial nations as part of the phase 1, phase 2 effort. If you are proposing to an ITAR specific topic and you're worried about being able to go off and commercialize that technology after the completion of the phase 1, phase 2 in the private sector, one thing to keep in mind is that any technology that you bring to the SBIR, you own. You have all the data rights to, so that is safe and you can go and commercialize that. What you develop with phase 1, phase 2 funding, the government does have some rights to, and that's when you would want to kind of consult your legal team to confirm that it's you're not going to get yourself in any trouble there. Hopefully that answers that pretty well. All of these proposals, phase 1, phase 2, will be unclass. I know I'm scrolling through a lot of this, but a lot of this is just kind of general SBIR information. So registration certifications, as Tina mentioned, you will need your UEI, you'll need a DSIP login for anybody who you want to have access to the portal and being able to edit in the portal. It's going to be done on the firm admin page. So whoever your firm admin is, they'll need to give permissions to anybody that you want to be able to edit proposals. Anybody with a DSIP login under your company can see proposals, but you'll need to have the firm admin give them permission to edit. The principal investigator, sorry, in the chat, someone asked, if awarded, does the PI have to commit 50% or more of their time to the project? No, they don't. So generally, I always suggest at least 25% of the PI's time. That won't raise any red flags if they're working at least 25% of their time on the project. And always check, you know, each individual solicitation to see if it has any additional requirements. Occasionally there will be. Keep in mind, you can only submit material that they're requesting for. So no video links, CDs, DVDs, you know, you're not going to be sending anything in. Everything will be submitted on the DSIP portal. Anything that you submit that isn't listed as requested material as part of the solicitation won't get reviewed. All right, so for the phase 1 proposal itself is made up of 6 sections. So the proposal cover sheet, that's going to be your abstract, benefits, period of performance, and I'll click over to the compliance matrix here so you can kind of see how I break this down for myself. So volume 1, I just pulled directly from the BAA solicitation there. The technical abstract needs to be no more than 200 words. And you're not going to want to include any proprietary information. This is all going to be publicly available. Additionally, in the cover sheet, you'll see 3 additional sections beyond just the abstract and the benefits. The company contact information, so that'll be where you list your principal investigator and any corporate official you want on comms with the government. as part of the award contract negotiation. And you'll also see a section where they'll ask questions like, is this a ITAR related effort? Have you submitted a proposal of essentially equivalent work? Do you allow the government to share your information to other entities for commercialization purposes, things like that? And we won't dive into all the questions there, but there we go. So then we get into the technical volume. So that's going to be your actual concept paper where you're talking about the effort, your technical objectives, where it's your pitch. Volume 3 is your cost volume. That is going to have your direct labor, material, equipment costs, all of that built out. That company commercialization report is going to be volume 4. So if this is your first SBIR award, you're just going to select no in the section. If you do have multiple SBIR awards and it needs to be updated from your last submission, you'll just want to make sure that you go to the sam.gov website. And that is going to be, or sorry, SBIR.gov, the SBIR.gov website. And under your firm information, there's a little form filled that you'll fill out. It'll spit out a PDF that you'll then upload to the DSIP portal. And that'll complete that, that requirement there. Supporting documents. So all proposals now require that contractor certification regarding provision of prohibited provision contracting for certain telecommunications and video surveillance services or equipment, and then foreign ownership or control disclosure as applicable. This particular solicitation we'll be going over does have some other supporting document, and we'll dive into that once we finish going through this proposal, the overarching BAA. And so kind of just order of operations when I'm breaking down these solicitations, I always start with the overarching BAA, and then I move to the specific solicitation. If you are going to put proprietary information on your proposal, you just need to have on the first page this little pull quote, and then each page that is proprietary, you're going to mark out with this pull quote here. And then you'll see the volume 1 instructions. So like I said, no more than 200 words. Do not include any proprietary or classified information in the cover sheet. One thing you'll see on the portal is each section you hit the submit button to get to 100%. That doesn't mean that you can't edit it anymore or that you're submitting that section of the proposal. It'll just bring that section to 100% complete once you hit that submit button. Hopefully that makes sense. Format for the technical volume. So this is going to be a PDF, and each solicitation will have its own length requirements. Layout, fairly standard, 8.5 by 11, 1-inch margins, no type smaller than 10 point. And I always bring that into my little checklist here. So I have the technical format and then the technical content requirements. So this is where you'll notice the first big difference between the overarching BAA and the Army specific one. So the overarching BAA has quite a few more sections that are required. The nice thing is, regardless of what each individual entity titles them, they're all generally looking for the same information. So identification, significance of the problem or opportunity is going to be a part of almost every single proposal that you're going to do. You know, why does the DoD, why does the Army care about what you're offering? How does it impact the end user? How does it impact the customer? The phase 1 technical objectives, what are we trying to accomplish with the phase 1, phase 2, and then the statement of work, how are we going to accomplish that? Related work, so this lens is how you are going to showcase your subject matter expertise. And if this is your first effort with the government, that's all right. You know, pilots, pre-sales, team members who have worked with other companies in a similar field, all of that is relevant to this related work section, and just showcases that you guys are subject matter experts in your field, and that you will be successful completing the project. Relationship with future research and development. So again, this program is all about transitioning. We don't want to build a bunch of shiny rocks to sit on the shelf and collect dust. You know, the goal is to get this technology out to the warfighter and to make an impact on them. So how do we plan to transition? What future, you know, whether it's funding, equipment, additional feasibility testing, what kind of timeline are we looking at? What additional resources will we need to transition the technology? And then you get into commercialization strategy as well. So once the technology is transitioned, who are the target customers, both within the DoD and you know, within the commercial sector? Key personnel. So I always suggest on phase 1 having at least 2, your principal investigator and your technical lead. Your principal investigator is going to be your project manager. Your technical lead is going to be that technical subject matter expert. And you can have more than that, but at a bare minimum, I always suggest having the 2. With phase 2, you'll probably have a bigger team because you're moving beyond just kind of feasibility testing to actual development. Foreign citizens, if you are proposing to have anybody on your team who is a foreign citizen, they need to complete the work in the US and they do need to have the necessary visa work permit. Facilities and equipment. So this is going to be if, you know, there is any specialty facilities that you're going to need, or if you need government furnished equipment or facilities, we want to make sure that we include that as part of the proposal. And then any subcontractors, consultants that you'll be bringing on. The prior, current, pending support of similar proposals or awards. This goes back to that essentially equivalent of work that we mentioned. You know, the government just wants to know that we're not proposing the same work. If there is something similar, we just want to showcase how this is a pivot in either use case or development. I'll pause there because I do want to jump into the back into the compliance matrix a little bit so that you can see how I'm building out each individual checklist section. And let me know if that's, I know the type is a little small here. So I create 2 sections. One is just a quick sheet for myself with everything that I know is going to be needed before we hit the submit button. And you can see here volume 1 through 5 or through 6 and what each of those sections is going to need to be complete. And then the actual compliance matrix itself, where I'm pulling out the information directly from the BAA. Volume 3. So I don't want to dive too deep into this because this can open up a bit of a can of worms, but at broad strokes, you'll need to list direct labor. I always suggest as much as possible in phase 1, building out most of your cost as direct labor. Just keeps things simple for yourself. And most of these are not really high dollar efforts. This one, the Army one that we're highlighting here, is $250K over a 6-month period of performance. So And there may be, some equipment since we are doing some ballistic testing potentially and building out some hardware. There may be some special tooling and test equipment requirements. We just need to justify how we're arriving at the cost for the equipment. One of the things that the government is keeping an eye on is they're not looking to retool your facilities as part of a phase one effort. They want to make sure that they're getting a return on that investment. If there is any travel, we'll want to show how we arrived at the numbers, and this can be as simple as a Google search where we show flight comparison, rental car cost, and screenshotting that and uploading that as additional cost information under volume 3. If there is any cost sharing, it is permitted in phase 1, but not required. Sometimes you'll see on phase 1's an option period. So you complete a section of the work and then the government has the option to pick up the next section or to stop at that point. This proposal doesn't have an option period, but sometimes you will see that in the solicitation. And then if there are any subcontractors, obviously we'll just need to keep an eye that they're not completing more than 1/3 of the work with the phase 1. The CCR, I already mentioned, going to SBIR.gov, there is instructions here. For my own checklist, which I'll give this to Tina so that she can provide it out with the rest of the material. But I list the instructions for myself so that I have easy access. Where is that? There we go. And like we mentioned, there's 3 options here. If this is your first time submitting a SBIR, you're just going to select no. If you do have prior SBIR awards and the CCR needs to be updated to reflect those new SBIR awards, you'll do it from the SBIR.gov screen. You'll select yes and upload that new CCR. If this is you've won SBIRs in the past, but not since your last submission, then you can just select no and use the existing CCR. Then we have the 2 required documents. Well, I should say the 1 required document and the 1 document required if it's applicable to foreign ownership or control disclosure. There are some additional documents that you'll see in a lot of different solicitations. So letters of support, if you have those, I always suggest including them. These can be from the private sector. These can be from interactions you've had with copy. I'll make sure you get that. The letters of support can be from government end users that you've interacted with, anything that just showcases that there is interest in the project and that it has a strong potential for commercial transition is a great thing to include as part of the proposal. Additional cost information. So again, if you are proposing, to use hardware, equipment, this is a place that you could upload any additional material you wanted to provide to justify the price points that you arrived at. Funding agreement certification. So this is going to be required prior to your award. So I always suggest including it in the DCIP portal as part of your submission. It's not technically required at the time of submission, but it's a short document to fill out. It is an attachment on the BAA here at the bottom. Technical data rights. So as I mentioned, phase 1, you do have data protection under the SBIR program. Anything that you bring to the proposal, any solution technology, you own that. But if you did want to assert additional data rights, this is where you would fill out that form. Lifecycle certification, similar to the funding agreement certification, I suggest filling this out prior to the award. It's not due until it's about the halfway point of the award. Allocation of rights is specific to the SBIR program, basically where you're going to break down what the university owns IP-wise and what the SBC owns. And then volume 6 is the fraud, waste, and abuse training. It's a little slide deck that you have to complete each time you submit to the a proposal, which just goes over fraud and you know, it's acknowledgement that you're not everything that you've put into the proposal is truthful, and that you're not going to try and defraud the government in any way. Phase 1 evaluation criteria. This is a very broad strokes evaluation criteria. I think it's better to use the one that's mentioned in the Army solicitation specifically. The rest of the BA goes into the phase 2 proposal instructions, which is a little more detailed, and then the topic dates and the attachments. So here you can see that contractor certification. And if I keep on scrolling down, we'll get to eventually the funding agreement certification here. There's the foreign ownership disclosure. Yep. All right. So for the Army specific solicitation, so anything that's listed in here that is different from the overarching SAL, this supersedes that. So you'll want to use this as the final document. As Tina mentioned, these are due in September. The deadline is 12 p.m. Eastern time. One of the biggest tips I can give is to fill everything out on the DSIP portal. Even if you're still working on the technical volume, get everything else completed. That way, even if you're tweaking the technical volume till the last minute, all you have to do is upload that document and hit submit. The worst thing is having the technical volume all done, you go to submit the proposal and the portal is down just because of network bandwidth. So the technical volume for this specific effort can't exceed 5 pages, and it also requires a 10-slide commercialization plan that is attached to the technical volume, the 5-page technical volume. And it all gets attached as one PDF. The commercialization plan does not count towards the 5-page limit. And as I mentioned, the content of the technical volume for the Army solicitation is a little different from what is listed in the overarching SAL. They only list 3 required sections, which is going to be your technical approach, your team qualifications, and your commercialization section. That being said, when you look at the template that we'll go over here shortly, you'll notice that I'm still using a lot of the same language from the overarching BAA for each of those individual sections. Cost volume, so this is where you're going to find the period of performance as well as the dollar amount for this proposal. So $250K for the 6-month period performance, and it lets you know that there are no options planned for this effort. For your accounting purposes, the start date of this is anticipated 90 days after submission of the proposal. It is government contracting though, so take any dates with a major grain of salt. And then the content of the cost volume, they kind of reiterate what I had already mentioned, which is, you know, if you're going to include any flight costs, you can include screenshot comparisons, material purchases, internet searches. If this is one of your first times with government contracting, you won't have a DCAA audit, but if this is if you've done this multiple times, you may have already gone through the DCAA audit process. If you have done that, then you'll just want to make sure to include the audit compliance documentation. And then for the supporting documents for this specific proposal, they do want additional cost information as applicable, that funding agreement certification, the technical data rights if you're going to have any, the life cycle certification, and the allocation of rights won't be applicable for this effort. And then they get into the direct to phase 2 proposal guidelines. So now we can jump all the way down to, oh, before I jump down there, this evaluation criteria is key. This is what I use to double check myself that I am hitting each point on the proposal. When we go through the technical volume template, we'll reference back to this to kind of show how I'm checking each box as we go down. We have the 3 Army topics, so we're going to be doing the 024. And what's nice about this proposal is they list exactly what your technical objectives need to be. You know, we need to develop and demonstrate a replacement floor for the UH-60. We need to provide that mission configuration flexibility, the conceptual design, and then a test plan. So that's going to be, we're going to reiterate that in the proposal under our technical objectives and just kind of dive into how we plan on achieving that. So I'll pause there before we move on to the phase 1 template. And Tina, when are we due for a break? So I make sure that I'm not going over here.
Yeah, I think Chase, can you go back though to the compliance matrix and just kind of show how we rounded that out? But I think after that, we'll see if there's any more questions, and then, yeah, we'll take a quick break. So,
Perfect. Yep. So the technical volume, so that BAA here, this section here is where I pull the technical volume requirements directly into the content portion of the compliance matrix. Oh, did I oh, okay. I thought I lost my screen share for a second. Volume 3, same thing. I'm pulling directly from the Army solicitation to get that information here, the 6-month period of performance, the price, the different cost volume requirements. The CCR, that's going to be pulled from the overarching BAA, and then the supporting documents were pulled from the Army solicitation. And then I just have my checklist as the other tab here for easy reference for myself. Before I hit the submit button, I just make sure that everything gets marked green here, that I'm 100% compliant. So I'll pause there for any questions.
we've got a question in the room, so I'm going to give Roy the microphone so you all can hear.
Yeah, just a question. When you said 6 months and 250K on this proposal, say you have 2 companies submitting on the proposal, and one company says, hey, it's 250K I'm getting, it's 6 months, and another company B says, I'm only going to need 150K in 4 months. Now, I understand there's criteria, but how much does price and time really come into it? Or is it just say, I want 250K worth of effort put into this?
Yeah, certainly. So that's a great question. Unlike traditional contracting, I don't think, based off my experience, I wouldn't say price plays nearly as important of a role in firm fixed price SBIR contracts. You know, in traditional contracting, that's a huge portion of it. Making sure that you're coming in at the cheapest price possible while still achieving the objective. With the SBIR, it really is designed to stimulate the economy, and I always suggest proposing the full amount. If you think you can do everything that they're saying for less than 250K, then it doesn't hurt to include some bonuses, some things that maybe they hadn't thought of that you think you could do with the extra money.
Okay, and then one other question concerning commercialization. Since this is being the TPOC, or excuse me, the program office, the UH-60 program office is probably involved with saying, hey, I need a replacement for the floor for the helo. Now I got a question for you then. Wouldn't the commercialization be just supporting the UH-60 program office, or are you saying you could use the floor for maybe in other types of helos? Maybe clarify that just a little bit.
Yeah, certainly. So some of the things that I would, potentially consider including in the proposal. So obviously, like you said, the UH-60 program office is the the obvious one there that we want to include. Beyond that, we have this is going to be a lightweight ballistic floor. So UAVs are applicable potentially. Other type of vehicles that have stringent swap requirements, size, weight, and power requirements. Sikorsky, of course, is they're the ones for providing the platform there. So there may be commercial application there as well. So those would be all things that I would consider including as potential commercialization pathways beyond just the UH-60 program office. But that's obviously going to be your starting point.
Thanks, Chase. Do we have any other questions from the room or online? And I think too, I really want to drive home the point that we haven't even started writing yet. So there is a lot of upfront, like just digging through the broad agency announcements, talking to the TPOC, digging into the, if it's an Army specific topic, their specific BAA, digging through that and really making sure you have a good understanding of what they're looking for before you even put pen to paper. And so, a lot of upfront, before you actually get into the writing, which at that point, honestly, that's probably the easy part, and kind of formatting, making sure everything's formatted. But we live and die at C5 by these compliance matrix. So highly encourage you. I mean, you have what we use, and we'll get the one that Chase has filled out. We gave you guys a blank one, but we live and die by these. And it's always great to get a second set of eyes. So if you're in there, you're writing and you're doing it and you think you're compliant, but get a second set of eyes to literally take that checklist. And we have a great person on our team who's amazing at it. She will find something wrong, or, we thought we were answering the question and she's like, well, just literally word for word on that compliance matrix. And it's like, well, I think we could strengthen this section, or you're legitimately missing pieces of it. So I think it's a really good part of our process, and we encourage obviously others to do that as well. So,
yeah. And to Tina's point there, I tried to create a compliance matrix that was kind of as generic as possible and applicable to as many solicitations as possible. So, of course, this can be really tightened to match each solicitation you're going after. But this will be a general format that you can use, for a lot of different solicitations.
Hey, Chase, can you, because I did not answer Victoria's question fully. Can you comment on the piece with, I know we come across this all the time, of being able to let other people actually get in there and edit in the DSIP portal? Can you clarify that again for her?
Yeah, certainly. So your firm admin has to give permission to each individual who you want to be able to edit the proposal. If you're struggling with that, the DSIP help desk is actually really responsive, as long as we're not approaching a deadline. And so I've had some companies like get locked out of their account, or for whatever reason their firm admin is struggling getting a permission across to their team. A quick email to the help desk, and they were able to get it released essentially, or just add them in manually if you're struggling with that.
Hey Trace, yeah, can I just clarify? So just because it's a lot to type out. So when we contacted DSIP, they basically told us it was only the people who were associated with the specific proposal. So we're a very small business, so there's only like 5 or 6 of us on the whole entire proposal team that would even touch DSIP. We're all registered, we're all associated with our firm, but for each individual proposal, it only lets the person who is associated as the PI or the corporate official actually go in on DSIP in that individual proposal and make edits to the submission. So even though maybe me, who is registered in DSIP, is associated to my firm, if I'm not listed as that PI or corporate official, I can't even see it in my DSIP account that like we have a proposal open. So is that normal, or is there like something that we're just not doing correctly when we're first editing and drafting our proposal in DSIP? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. So it sounds like there's a permission issue there where, so even before you start a proposal, everybody on your team is going to have different privileges. For instance, I'm on the C5BDI's DSIP portal, but I'm not the admin, so I can't change any firm forms, but I can do anything with proposals. So it's just different permission levels. And the help desk should have been able to get that fixed for you. But I think there is a resource. I'll see if I can find that, and I'll include it with the compliance matrix when I send that out.
That would be super helpful. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anything else?
Yeah, any other questions? And please, like, some of these have been, varsity level questions. I mean, you have never seen any of this, probably someone else has the same question, and Chase and I live and breathe this, so we could have kind of glossed over something where you're like, ooh, I didn't quite understand that. So sure, there's no more questions. But luckily, what we're going to do next is we're going to take a break. So those in the room, we have coffee and some pastries out there. And then we're going to come back at so we'll do 10:35, and I see another question popped in as it relates to the tech bridges. And we'll get that answered for you for sure. So, but please, if you have more questions, throw them in the chat. So let's take a 10-minute break. So everyone back at their desk at 10:35, and we're going to start working on the tech volume and then get into the cost volume. So we'll see you all back here shortly. All right, Chase, I'm going to let you go ahead and get started. So everyone online and in the room. So I did post the link to the Google Drive with all the docs that we've been going through. And again, I will add in Chase's fully filled out compliance matrix. So we'll add that there. And again, everyone will be getting the slides. I will again put the link to the Google Drive with the docs. If you have any issues with it, you can respond to that MATB Gmail account, and I can get you stuff directly if you can't access the Google Drive. So this next part that Chase is going to be going through is again where you can get kind of hands-on. If you have that technical volume open, you can type some notes. I would highly encourage you to, because we're going to kind of give you some tips on maybe where we pull some information from, what you should be highlighting, that kind of thing. And then we should have time, depending on questions and stuff like that, to get into a little bit of the cost volume piece, and we'll give you some tips there and what it looks like in DSIP. But so I think there were no other questions from the group. So Chase, I am going to turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Tina. All right. So starting off, we do have, I'll start at the very top with the header here. So we're going to want to make sure that we include the topic number, our proposal number, which will be pulled directly from DSIP, and then the firm name. You'll also notice that we have the the blurb from the BAA in case the proposal does have proprietary information. We'll just want to make sure that that section is, or that note is on the first page, and then each page with proprietary information has this as the footer. So with that, starting off with the technical approach. So we're already kind of deviating from what was in the overarching BAA versus the Army specific solicitation. The overarching BAA did start with identification and significance of the problem. The Army solicitation is starting off with, or retitling it basically as technical approach. So regardless, I always like to start with an elevator pitch. I think this is going to, it's already going to be required for your volume 1 cover sheet in the actual DSIP portal. I think it's also good to include in the technical volume. In the DSIP portal, it's 200 words or less. Here you do have a little extra space, but I suggest keeping it to a paragraph. We're wanting to give high level who we are, what we're offering the government in the phase 1. It's our attention grabber. I also like to include, if you have any cool awards, cool partners, cool projects that you're doing, one line in there saying, hey, we're working with AWS on some cool software solution, whatever the case is. That's definitely applicable because it shows that commercialization traction right off the bat. If you have phase 3 awards, that's relevant here in the kind of elevator pitch. Then we jump right into identification and significance of the problem and opportunity. So we want to identify why the Army cares about our solution. So Tina already mentioned kind of the first thing you want to start with, if it's available, is your TPOC. The conversation that you have with the TPOC is going to be the most relevant, and you can pull a lot of great information from that conversation. If the TPOC isn't available, the next kind of step down is those reference documents. So they're going to give you insight into why they created the solicitation in the first place. This Army one is very specific. They have a very clear problem that they're trying to solve for. That might not always be the case. Sometimes they're looking for something as generic as how are TPOCs selected. So TPOCs are generally going to come from a research office within the Navy, Army, or Air Force. So like AFRL from Air Force, ONR for Navy, AFC for Army, and they've identified some specific end user problem out in the field that they're trying to solve for, and signed on to be the point of contact for that effort. Usually they are not the end user themselves, though they can be. The end user can submit as a TPOC, but generally speaking, it's going to be one of the research offices who has identified a problem out in the field. Hopefully that makes sense. Yep. So the reference material is going to be the other key piece. It's going to give direct insight into why they did the solicitation. Then Google is going to be your best friend. I had mentioned Sikorsky being the platform provider, and UAVs, and they mentioned specifically ballistic testing. So it would be relevant to look to see how many incidences we've had, like with small arms fire while forward deployed on the UH-60 platform. I like to start by filtering by within the last year to see the most relevant, if there's anything very relevant there, and then expand out from there if I can't find anything within that time frame. The other big piece, and this we had kind of mentioned in the overarching SBIR, if you're not just under general warfighter requirements, let me get up there. If you're under one of these more specific topics, you probably will have some overarching strategy documentation from the government saying, you know, what the kind of 5 to 10 year plan is in these specific fields, why they care about them. Unfortunately for this solicitation, it's the catch-all, so we won't find, you know, general warfighting requirements documentation to pull from. I do like to include like a pull quote from an end user or a strategic advisor within the like the UH-60 program office. You know, if we have something that we can find online there to include in this section, I think that's a great kind of attention grabber. And it shows that we've done some homework on the problem specific to the end users. Also, in the identification significance of the problem and opportunity section, we also want to discuss like what they're currently using. So in this case, the floor, the UH-60 floor doesn't match the swap requirements, the size, weight, and performance requirements of the aircraft that they need. Doesn't match the configuration flexibility. And so if we have a solution that does meet that requirement, how much of an improvement is it via cost, material, and this is, you know, it can be outside of just the specific solicitation, but whether it's a software solution that you're offering, why is what you're doing better than what the DoD is currently leveraging? Then we get into the phase 1 technical objectives. This solicitation has them spelled out very specifically for us. So I always suggest whenever possible, parroting back what they've provided in the solicitation and saying, as an example, go. There we go. Okay, so test plan to demonstrate floor can meet all structural vibrational impact loads. So that's going to be one of our technical objectives. So underneath that, we're going to say that's a key technical objective. Then we're going to say, what are the key results of those technical objectives? So how do we show that we've met this requirement? And so I like to break it down by bullet points. So I would have here, objective 1, and then key result. I think from a readability standpoint, this makes it very easy for the reviewer to identify what we're proposing to accomplish in the phase 1, phase 2, as well as the assessment method and how we determine whether we've been successful in that. The statement of work. So this is going to be your milestone schedule. This is going to be your breakdown, and if you do have subcontractors, on how the work share is going to be split. This is so the technical objectives are high level, what we want to accomplish. The phase 1 statement of work is how we're going to get there. The risks that we anticipate potentially preventing us from being successful, and how we plan on mitigating those. So again, you can keep this very simple. You know, if you have 10 steps, step 1 with what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, what risks there are to being successful, and how we plan to mitigate them. And if there is a deliverable in this step, you know, for instance, if step 1, you're sending over wireframing documentation, we'll want to include that deliverable as well. So, you know, initial concept paper. or it could be as simple as kickoff slide deck brief. We're not discussing open topics here, but that's become a hot topic within all the different branches. And for open topics, a lot of times you're identifying a problem that the DoD wasn't aware of or didn't have listed in this current round. And so I like to include a kickoff as one of the first steps of those efforts, because we're going to basically presenting our game plan, working with the end user to solve their mission need kind of as we see it, and we want to get that feedback from them as step one on, to make sure that our plans align. And generally speaking, for phase one, anywhere from 5 to 10 steps is fairly standard. We do want to make sure that this should be a significant portion of the proposal. So it needs to be a little more detailed than, hey, we're going to develop a concept paper. And then step 2, we need to talk through how we're going to do that, who's going to be responsible for it if you do have a prime and subcontractor. Related work. So this is again where we're going to be able to show our subject matter expertise in the field, past successes, and if there's a force multiplier there. If you're already working with the Navy on their M860 platform, it's going to be very similar to the Army's UH-60 platform with a lot of the same requirements. And we want to make sure that we're not saying it's essentially equivalent work, because we will be developing and designing it specific to the Navy, the Army use cases. But there's going to be some overlap there. So if we have a SBIR phase 1, if we have a RIF with the Navy, then those two kind of can work synergistically to provide a solution for both, and hopefully, provide some additional funding, additional development. And related work also, I should mention, especially for new companies, I submit a lot of proposals with companies who this is their first time working with the DoD, or a product that hasn't become privately available yet in the commercial market. That's all right. Pre-sales are applicable. Pilots are applicable. Research papers that you've done, to determine that this is a solution that there's a market fit for. All of that is applicable here, and can just kind of highlight that you guys, your team, has the past experience to bring the project successfully to the completion of the phase 1, phase 2. Team qualifications, same thing. We're just highlighting specifically the principal investigator and the technical lead, their experience, and this doesn't have to be with the specific SBC who's submitting the proposal. So if they've worked at another company but have relevant experience to this effort, then you can include that. If something is not applicable, these are just things you can include, not things that are required. So, if they don't have relevant awards or patents, that's fine. You can just delete that section. I would, everybody needs to have some relevant experience. We need to justify why they're being included in the project. But we don't have to, it's better to delete a section than put NA there. As we kind of mentioned, if there is any foreign citizens that are going to be included in the project, we need to include their country of origin, type of visa or work permit, and level of involvement.
Hey,
I
Chase,
usually, yes,
I
ma'am.
think it's also worth adding, team qualifications like that is one of the key criteria they're looking for, that we try to encourage, those folks, master's, PhD, the relevant experience is key, like you said, but schools and degrees is something they look at too. So, if it's in the electrical engineering realm of what you're doing, having that master's or PhD in that field is looked upon well.
Favorably.
So,
Yeah.
I just want to add that piece.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Tina. And yeah, just kind of building off of that, it's especially important for your technical lead if it's something specific, like Tina mentioned, structural engineering, something like that, then having a degree in the field is definitely an important piece of that. For the principal investigator, since they are more of a project manager, I would say it's it's not a knock against you if they aren't necessarily the technical SME. As long as that technical lead does have those qualifications. It's great if both have them, but you definitely want to be able to showcase that in some way between the two of them. Commercialization strategy. So this section, I think this is the one I get the most questions on when we're writing a new proposal for a first-time client. The customer competition section, we need to show our competitive moat. And this goes back to, you'll see a lot of kind of repeat information in a lot of proposals. When there's 5 pages, I would say if we're addressing something, somewhere else in the proposal, it's all right to not repeat it. But if it's a longer proposal, 15, 20 pages, then repeat, make it easy on the reviewer because they're looking in specific sections for specific information. On a 5-page paper, it's not as big of a problem, but once you do get into those longer form submissions, definitely it's all right to repeat yourself. So, key technology objectives, we're already highlighting it up here. I don't think we need to belabor that point down here in customer competition, but we do want to talk through the current competition and our advantages, what competitive moat we offer, any IP that makes it so we're going to have at least the temporal advantage before the rest of the market catches up. Then when we get to the market itself, we need to discuss our go-to-market strategy. Where are we going to be sourcing customers? Like we discussed before, the UH60 program office is going to be kind of step 1 for this effort. Then we need to be looking at the market size. So how many helicopters does the Army currently deploy? Okay, we got a question in the chat. What about certifications, including specific subject educational seminars from accredited agencies for completion? 100%. Yeah, all of that is relevant to include in your team qualifications. And a lot of times proposals will allow you to include a resume. Wasn't listed in the Army solicitation for this effort, so I wouldn't include it because it's just not going to get reviewed. But you will notice normally they will allow you to submit a supplemental resume for your team in volume 5. So sometimes I get clients with a huge long list of all their publications, speeches, books. And so in that case, I like to, whenever possible, include that in volume 5, the full list, and maybe a bullet point highlight in the technical volume itself. Yep, certainly. So where we description of hurdles to acceptance of the innovation. Market size. Yeah. And so how much market share do we think we could capture? And this is important to be, realistic with your team size. What would it take, over the next 5 years for you guys to scale and actually commercialize the project? And it's okay if, you're a 3-person team out of your garage, as long as we're acknowledging what resources, what teaming partners, and what expertise we're going to bring to the team to be able to scale to the level that the DoD is looking for. Intellectual property is obviously key. That provides that that temporal advantage I mentioned. Trade secrets, whatever it is that puts you ahead of the competition, we want to include to show that somebody else can't do this. We're the right team for the job. Plans for securing necessary non-SBIR funding. A lot of times, SBIRs, you're adapting something that you've already commercialized out in the field or out in the private sector. So it may be that you don't need any additional funding beyond what's being provided by SBIR to adapt the project and transition it to phase 3 and beyond throughout the DoD. But if you do require that additional funding, then we need to list out where we plan to secure that funding. And it can be phase 3 funding through the DoD. It can be, investors, angel investors, partners, whatever the case. We'll just want to show what our game plan is for securing that financing so that we can scale the project. Same thing for assistance and mentoring. So if you already have some of those pieces in place, maybe you already have a couple angel investors lined up, this is a great place to highlight that. Same thing with, I should mention, if you have like a manufacturing partner or you have a research lab, a research institution that you're working with, all of that is relevant here. And then we can kind of go to the Army solicitation, and you'll see how we're kind of making sure that we check each of these evaluation boxes. So potential for Army impact, operational impact, that's a significance identification of the problem, what scale, and I like the way they phrase this, at the scale of a single Army end user, argue that the jobs or lives will be significantly improved if your solution is adopted. So you kind of want to view it with that two-pronged approach. At the smallest scale, end user scale, why do they care? And then DoD wide, Army wide, how much of an impact would it make? So that you want to address both in the concept paper. The technical feasibility, this is when we're getting into those technical objectives, the milestone plan. We want to highlight the scientific feasibility. I would say there's a little bit of a trap you can fall into where you don't want to get too technical, especially in a 5-page white paper. And the reviewers might not be subject matter experts like you in the field. So we want to make sure that we're showing that we do have that background, that scientific feasibility background, and that we know about the risks to a successful project and how to mitigate those, but we don't want to jump into too technical jargon. Enabling technologies, if there is any foundational technology that we're bringing to the proposal, or if there's any partners who are bringing some enabling technologies, we want to be able to mention those, and that should be included in our milestone steps. What technologies, in addition to what we're proposing, are going to be lumped in for successful completion. Are there alternative technical approaches? I think this is a little difficult to fit into a 5-page white paper, but if there are multiple avenues of approach, why did you select the one that we're proposing in the phase 1? And it doesn't have to be an exhaustive list, but a paragraph, half a paragraph on why the approach that we're proposing is the best approach is definitely relevant. And then they're always going to look at technical risk mitigation. There's always risks of, especially phase 1, phase 2, that the development effort stalls, or we don't get to where we're looking to achieve in the phase 1, phase 2. So we need to identify those and explain the mitigation. Just saying, not applicable or there are no risks is definitely not an option for a successful proposal. Army transition pathway. This is our, commercialization plan. This is going, and same thing with cash flow, firm survival risk, other people's money, financial profit. So past sales, future revenue projections, angel funding, all of that is applicable here. And then team ability, like Tina mentioned, we want to make sure that we're really showcasing that that background and the work in the field that you guys have already done. And then finally, the submission quality. So we want to make sure that every grammar, spelling, all of that looks good, formatting is correct, and that we're checking all the boxes for the solicitation requirements. So went through a lot there. Hopefully I didn't confuse anybody, and open to any questions that you guys may have.
Thanks, Chase. And yeah, I like there too that they actually put the weight for all of them. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't for the evaluation. But I mean, that's how you're getting judged. So if you aren't kind of taking your tech volume and bouncing it off that once you've written it, you're doing a disservice to yourself. So highly encourage you, definitely take a look at that and you can see where it's going to be weighted and how it's going to be graded. So it's right there for you. Any questions in the room as it relates to the tech volume? So this is volume 2 in DSIP. And also want to emphasize, I was just talking in here that, I mean, if you're 5 pages and 1 sentence over, so you're technically 6 pages, I mean, automatic disqualification. So can't emphasize enough, and we'll get into the cost volume here a little bit. Again, if you're 1 cent over the 250K, they're not even going to look at anything. So really important, the compliance piece here. And even like if you chose 9.5 font, that's going to be disqualified because they say the lowest font there, I think it was 10 on this one, right? I mean, they're normally 10, but
yeah, this was 10.
It's so important that you dig into the broad agency announcements, the instructions, and that's kind of the easy part. But if you don't do that, you're automatically going to get disqualified and they're not even going to read your technical approach to consider you. So
yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Tina, because this is actually a point that I think I get asked this every single round. So if you are submitting a phase 2, a lot of times they have a 15-page limit requirement, and for whatever reason, the solicitation allows you to have a table of content and a glossary that doesn't count against the 15 pages. So you actually are going to be uploading a 17-page document. For whatever reason, DSIP throws an error message saying that you're over the page limit, even though you're not. It's all right. It still lets you submit. To Tina's point, just make sure that you're following the solicitation. I don't know if it'll throw the same error message on this one, since the solicitation says it has a 5-page limit, but you're going to attach that 10-page commercialization deck to it. So it may throw the similar error message, but as long as you're following the solicitation, you don't have to worry about the error message there.
yeah, good point. And because DSIP, right? DSIP's taking Army submissions, Navy submissions, Air Force submissions, all the DoD entities that participate. So they have to be broad enough to take those. So it's really on you to ensure you're meeting that those specific requirements for whatever topic you're submitting to. And yeah, DSIP will throw errors, or it'll let you submit costs that's greater than what you actually can and not throw you an error in that instance. But it's on you to make sure that you're at 250K or below for that one. Okay, Rory's got a question. I'm going to give him the mic.
All right.
Yeah, with the proposal submission, well, you talked about that when you're writing up your technical description, the small business SME, the person that's going to be evaluating it might not be a SME in that area. So I would think, though, that the technical point of contact is usually the person that is going to be on the selection board. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Usually. Yep. The technical point of contact will usually be on the selection board. The thing to remember, there'll be multiple reviewers. So you are writing to kind of a broad audience. So you may have someone who's very familiar with the vertical that you're submitting to, and you may have someone who a lot of times you'll have like an end user or someone who may be the one out in the field actually using the technology, using the solution, but has no kind of a background on how it would be developed or built.
And again, I guess this goes back to the initial section this morning. We're building the relationship with the TPOC when you can ask questions.
100%. Yeah, I think that's key. This program is very competitive. So anything you can do to up your probability of win prior to even deciding to go after the proposal, because that's a huge piece of this is, going after the proposals that are right for you and your team and the bandwidth that you guys have. So anything you can do to improve that P-win is huge.
And Chase, I just want to add kind of to Roy's point there. So, right, for this one, we're writing to a very specific topic, UH-60s. So that, like Roy said and Chase said, that TPOC is likely they will be on the selection board. If you're familiar with SBIRs and know AFWorks has gone to an open call method, so where we're figuring out a problem in the Air Force and proposing a solution to it and what the problem is to AFWorks and Air Force, and that's where especially that selection or that review board is not always a SME in that exact area. At least one of the three reviewers will have some background in there, but that's kind of where it's that balance of not too technical, so you're so down in the weeds that they have no idea what you're talking about, but enough, technical approach that they get what you're doing, they understand where you're coming from, and you backed it up. So it's really a fine balance between not getting into the weeds, but enough technical feasibility and understanding that they understand that you know what you're talking about.
Yep. Yeah. And that's a great point, Tina. And unique to the SBIR program is end users can submit the topics. So as long as they're willing to sign on as TPOCs, end users are able to write up a SBIR topic and present it for potentially being released. And in those cases, they might not be the subject matter expert, even though they are listed as the technical point of contact. What they'll be the end user. So that that distinction can definitely play a role in how you're writing the proposals, and that's why that phone call is so helpful, because you'll get a better sense of who the reviewer is going to be, or at least one of the reviewers.
100% agree. So Chase, do you want me to shift over to sharing my screen and getting into the cost volume piece?
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right, so I'm going to let you stop sharing. I'm going to go back over here.
And I think we have some extra time because we went through that pretty quick. So I can answer any questions that come up as it relates to both the technical volume, cost volume, or any of the other things that we covered before.
Yeah, I think we should have a little bit of time at the end, and I'll stick around, and hopefully you can too. But okay, so right now Chase is gonna kind of shift over to the cost volume, which in DSIP aligns to volume 3 you've heard us talk about. So, and this is luckily screenshotted right out of DSIP. So you're seeing exactly what you're gonna have to answer the mail on for that. So Chase, over to you.
Thank you, Tina. And I see Brian asked a question. Do you know of companies that help small businesses with SBIR sitter proposals to write or review our packages prior to submissions? I know of one called SBIR Advisors, but wonder if this is a common type of service business. So yeah, it is a common type of service business. C5BDI, we help, that's at least a part of our business. We're on our end, we also do a lot of business development in tandem with that, but there are companies that focus purely on proposal support. Yeah, I can't name them off the top of my head, but there's quite a few of them.
And Brian, feel free to reach out to Chase or I, and we can, understanding what you're looking for, absolutely make some recommendations, especially if it's just proposal support. I mean, we do, that's part of what we do, and happy to talk to you about it, but there are companies that is all they do is help you write the proposals. So they have different kind of models for how they do that too.
All right, so volume 3. So you'll notice when you get into volume 3, before you even get into the section to the left there that has like the direct labor, overhead, G&A, profit rate, and review, there's this cost volume overview section. And basically you're going to check any boxes that apply for your solicitation. So if you are proposing subcontractors, you're going to click that box, materials, travel, equipment, supplies. TABA is generally not used on, I'd say 90% of the solicitations, SBIR solicitations that I've submitted. But if it is, if it is offered, it will be listed in the solicitation. As far as equipment and supplies, that's a question I get a lot, what's the difference? So equipment, think larger items that you would need to develop the technology. Supplies is going to be kind of, if you need some iPhones because you're going to have end users working on an app, that could be listed as supplies versus equipment. I'm thinking over $3,000 to $5,000. I start looking generally into, we're buying bigger equipment pieces. We got a question here. Are COTS rated ISO products with lifecycle considered past proof of concept of phase 2 proposal solicitation? Yes. So COTS, so COTS, for anybody who's not familiar, is a commercial off the shelf. That is, you kind of have to be careful with how you propose it, because the SBIR program is a research and development effort first and foremost. So we can't propose just kind of minor modifications to a COTS product and say, okay, now this is our phase 2. But if the COTS product is the basis, kind of proof of concept, to your point, of your phase 1 feasibility study, and so therefore you're ready for a direct to phase 2, and taking that COTS phase 2 or COTS product and developing it in a new direction or further capabilities, then yes, 100%. Yep, RDT&E, research technology, yep, and development. So does that answer your question, Zane? All right.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah,
my pleasure. So for the once we've selected all the different subcomponents of the cost volume that we'll be including in the proposal, then we're going to specify the type of payment desired. Always suggest going with partial payments as work progresses. It's the recommended box. Regardless, it's a firm fixed price contract that is going to be released as milestones are hit. So whoever your contracting officer is, in partnership with your technical point of contact, they'll work together to confirm that you guys completed a milestone, and then that funding is going to be released to you. Tina, you can go ahead and click on to the next slide. All right, so the first section is direct labor, and as I kind of mentioned, I like to, as much as possible, build out the phase one funding, phase one specifically, as much as possible into labor. So the first section, it will automatically populate with your principal investigator. Then you'll get the labor category. Pick the closest that's applicable. This will be one of those items that you love the DSIP portal for. The labor categories are not in alphabetical order, so you kind of just gotta search through the drop down for the one that is the most applicable. But if you're not finding it, they do have like chief executive. They have kind of general program managers type of roles. So there'll be something in there for you to click. Make sure that you do select a labor category because it won't get to 100% submission if you miss that piece. Level of education, self-explanatory, same thing with years of experience. Fringe rate. So this is, of course, it's up to you guys how you want to format your cost volume. I always suggest going fully burdened labor rates with no fringe rate, no G&A. So that's going to be your general administration costs. So for fringe rate, I usually put no, and then employee hours and employee rate. And I base these off of the GSA iCalc website. So if you just search GSA ICALC in Google, the website will pull up. It's gone through a couple iterations and updates recently, but it seems to be working correctly again. But now if you go on that website and you type in principal investigator, you'll get a list of past proposals and the employee rate range. As long as you're falling within the standard deviation of that rate range, you're usually safe. In fact, of the 1,000+ proposals that I've submitted, I've only had 2 come back with additional questions on cost volume, and it had more to do with the fact that the KO had questions about whether it qualified for RDT&E funding, and not had anything to do with the employee rate. So then the next box are labor rates detailed above fully loaded. Again, I suggest putting yes. And then when you're explaining the costs, I put in the line labor rates are going to be based off of GSA FY22 rates. You can grab a screen share of the iCalc website and upload that as just additional substantiation of how you arrived at that price point. Of course, if you've gone through a DCAA audit or you've worked with the government in the past, you should have labor rates already determined, and it's just plug and play. Next slide. All right, so part of the reason I like to go fully burdened labor rates and not do any kind of general and administrative costs is to make this section as simple on myself as possible. So if you fully burden labor rates, you get to just put rate %0 for labor cost overhead rate, and then you get to put no down the line on the rest of these because all of it will be not applicable. For the specific effort that we're proposing to here, there was no cost sharing. Profit rate, again, this is up to you. 7% is pretty industry standard, and I've never had any contracting officers come back with any questions or concerns with a 7% profit rate. That's the cost volume. Any questions there? As broad brushstrokes, but hopefully that provides some insight there. Gina, I think you might have broken up. I didn't catch that.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up the GSA per diem site just so we can kind of show them that too. I think that's I think we doing this a lot take it for granted, but it's a great resource for anyone planning to travel or putting per diem in. It's those rates are available. So give me 1 second while I switch over mics and I'll pull that up. But if anyone has any questions, especially online, throw them in the chat and Chase can get to those too. All right. Chase, can you hear me on this one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. All right. Okay, let me stop sharing for a second. And I'm gonna pull up that GSA per diem site for everyone.
And after you do that, will you also pull up the GSA iCalc website for them as well? In fact, let me see if I can post that in the chat.
Yeah, I think so let me share my screen here and I'll kind of walk you guys through this. Okay, so Google GSA per diem. So you Google GSA per diem, and then you're going to come to right General Services Administration, and it looks like FY23 rates are now available. So this comes into play for travel. Phase 1, not required that you go out to see your TPOC, but if you want to say, hey, I'd like to do my kickoff in person, or maybe my final deliverable in person, you know, you got to know where you're going. So say we were going to go, to, California's got a million. Well, I guess that could be good. So say we want to go out to California, say we're going to go to Los Angeles Air Force Base. It's going to be expensive. And if you have the zip, you can put that in there too. But what's going to come up is, so Los Angeles. So this is all when you go to for like hotel rates, this is what's allowed from the government. So depending on what month, right? And this is where knowing, so these are due September. Chase said, right, typically notified within 90 days. So October, November, December. So maybe doing a kickoff January, February. Again, no one's going to hold you to as long as you're sticking to within these rates. So say February, $182 per night for a hotel. As you come down, we get into meals and incidentals. And so this is where we typically do, you know, a 3-day trip. So 1 day of travel, 1 day on site, 1 day coming home. So your first and last day of travel is going to be that 55.50. So you only get a certain percentage of the overall per diem. And then it would be $74 for that middle day. So again, these all kind of go into pricing out your travel. And like Chase said, you know, go, if you're looking February, you can go look for flights, you know, find something reasonable, screenshot it. You can upload that. Same with rental. Again, just Google, I use Enterprise usually, and find, you know, is it going to cost me $40 a day? Screenshot it. And that's all part of your, what you can upload with your cost volume. So great website. And then I can go to the iCalc.
Yeah, I just posted it in the chat.
But
Because
any questions on that too? So anyone, again, this would be costing out your travel for the phase 1 or phase 2 if you're going to include it. Not required, but this is where you could, you know, help with that estimate. All right, GSA iCalc. Yeah, and as Chase said, this has gone through a lot of updates, so sometimes you never know what they're gonna be showing up here. So I want labor rates. Well, I want
the calc quick rate is the.
Oh, it is a calc and quick rate. Yeah, see, I haven't been here. Let me go. Of course, I'm clicking on it and it's not letting me do anything.
Do you want me to share? I have it pulled
Yeah,
up.
do you have it up? Yeah, I'll stop sharing. Yeah.
right. So this is, if the link had worked for Tina, this is what you would see here. So you could search for, you know, whatever title you would like. So software engineer, and they have different levels, like senior software engineer. And you'll see, you know, we have a number of contracts with an average rate of $140 with the standard deviation. So as long as we're falling within that standard deviation, you shouldn't run into to any issues. You can also see the price by education level and experience. So that is what I use to pull up the labor rates. I don't know if yeah, I was about to say, yeah, Brian, I'm not sure if the chat's recording, but Tina and I can definitely provide the links to those.
Yeah, we'll create like a little references Word doc in there, and we'll have the link to the per diem stuff and then the GSA calc here.
Okay, I'll stop sharing here. And any other questions on anything that we covered?
Yeah, I know that was a lot, and I think I'll come up here. I've got one last screen, so if there are no questions, but again, you know, to reemphasize, so this is specific to DoD. So these are DoD SBIRs that we went through. Again, each, you know, DHS, NOAA has all their little nuances, but for the most part, I mean, they follow pretty similar, where there's going to be a tech volume, there's going to be a cost volume. They may have different portals they use, but anything DoD related for SBIRs is going to go through DSIB. So, you know, first step is at sam.gov. Then getting registered in DSIP, and then kind of digging in there. But, you know, Chase and I have gone over all the tools that we use, all the different sections, you know, how you're going to create the capability and compliance matrix that you can use to make sure you're hitting all those pieces. So you're going to have our contact information because you're going to get this slide deck, but you can always reach out if you have a question. But hopefully you all found this extremely helpful if you've never done this before, or even a good reference point for those of you and you picked up something different that, you know, if you've been doing this for a while, that could help you in the future. So what I want to end with, and then you know, I'll stick around here in person. Okay. And Roy has a question, but yeah, if you have any questions, throw them in chat. And in person, we can obviously answer, but we've got Roy has a question here.
Well, not really a question, just a comment. Yeah, we have the survey up there, but I would like to thank Tina and the whole C5 BDI team. I'd like to thank 757 Accelerate for helping us with this, good PIA partners. And again, it's a teaming arrangement, and it's kind of falls into the 8 steps of doing business with the Navy or DoD for that fact. And I want to remind people that we have another tech talk on the 15th of September, and that'll talk more about one of the other steps with SAM registration and items like this. If there's anything you want to see more, please let us know. We'll see if we can incorporate it. But thank you.
Yeah, and I will definitely encourage you, like if you get out your phones and you just take a you know, camera on that QR code. So this, I think I mentioned it in the beginning, this workshop stemmed from feedback we got on something we did in April. So if there's topics you want to hear us talk about, there's other like workshops like this you would like to see us do, the best way to tell us that is through this quick short survey. So again, if you just on your phone, you can do it right now. I think it's 5 questions. So we'd really appreciate that. And then again, all those areas that you can reach us on: LinkedIn, Instagram. I've got the link to those in the second slide deck that you'll have access to. So LinkedIn is a great resource that, you know, we're posting all the stuff we have upcoming on there. And, you know, so September 15th is that next Tech Talk. You've got to get registered through our Eventbrite site. The link's up there. There is a QR code. Not sure if you can scan that one if it's big enough, but this again will be a great resource for, you know, companies just getting started, but also VIPC, which is a Virginia-based organization, has some great resources for companies that are a little bit further along and some funding sources there. So I would encourage you that, you know, even if you aren't a startup, that you'll probably get something, some good information out of this Tech Talk. That they're an hour long. We're doing 1 to 2 of them a month. So again, if you follow us on, especially LinkedIn, I think you'll know when we're doing those next. Okay, good. We did. Okay. I was going to say, if there's any questions.
Yeah. So it looks like, yeah, we had a question from Rachel. If you have a recommendation for award and wish to adjust the budget according to inflation or additional equipment needs, do agencies have some flexibility? Yes and no. So SBIR phase 1 and phase 2, the budget is fixed, especially once you get into like contract negotiation. Now you have flexibility as long as you're coming under budget. For instance, if you decide, hey, we proposed 3 trips, but we'd really like to spend that money on this equipment piece that we've determined that we need as part of this process, that shouldn't be an issue. You know, you negotiate that, or you'd contact your KO and your technical point of contact to confirm that they're okay with that. But as long as it's still falling underneath that, in this case, $250K, that wouldn't be an issue. And then additionally, if you complete the phase 1, phase 2, and you determine, hey, there's some more stuff that we want to do, or the end user says this was great, but we need some additional capabilities, or even if you run into a roadblock that you and the TPOC were not anticipating, then there's phase 2 extensions, there's TAC-5 programs. There's a lot of different programs for follow-on funding to supplement the transition from phase 1 to phase 3.
All right. Any last minute questions? And again, Chase can stick around for a little bit. I will be here in the room. So if you think of anything, let us know in the next 20 minutes. If not, you'll have our contact information and you'll get an email to you. And again, when that email goes out, you'll have the link to the recording. So up on our YouTube site, you're going to get this slide deck that you've seen here. And I will also include the link to the Google Drive where all the documents we went through, including the filled in compliance matrix, and we'll create a quick reference sheet where some of these links that we went through here, especially at the end, you'll have access to those. So, you know, as of right now, you have all the tools and tips to create a really great proposal to submit to the DoD. And I hope that it was helpful to those of you online, and thank you for participating.